Welcome to the Elevate podcast. This series focuses on elevating and inspiring women and girls into or to remain in the tech sector from the classroom to the boardroom. I'm Kelly Kwarteng, founder and CEO of Helzac and host of the show. Elevate Women in Tech series. Today we meet Hena Naranbhai, a Director of Strategic Development at Barclays. Hena has an extensive background in the financial services industry, both as an accountant and technology program director. She has delivered multi-million-pound initiatives, led numerous transformation programs, and implemented innovative technology solutions across finance and treasury globally. Hena is a qualified accountant and has spent over 20 years transversing between technology and finance. She is an ambassador for DEI and an active member of the Women in Technology Committee, and recently appointed Women in Tech EMA Chief of Staff, and also leads on various wellbeing initiatives. Hena is passionate about DE&I and with the intent of paying it forward to the pipeline of talent behind her. Hena, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the episode today. Really looking forward for us diving into and talking all about mentorship and community. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me.
No worries. Well, we'll jump straight in because you've had a really interesting career journey. Obviously, you're a woman in tech who comes from a finance background. So not the traditional tech career that most people would think a techie would need to have. So it would be great to understand kind of your career journey and how you play kind of such a pivotal role in large tech transformation programs as a non-technical leader. And just walk us through that journey to where you are today.
Sure, Kelly. As you mentioned, I didn't set out to have a career in technology, and to provide all the listeners some context, I'm going to start at the beginning. So, like most teenagers, I did my A-levels here in the UK. I actually failed my A-levels. Well, not completely failed them, but I didn't get the best marks that I could have. And I remember sitting down with two of my cousins, and they said, "You've got three options." And it felt quite, intimidating. Oh God, I've got three options. I've got to be an adult and make some decisions. And these options were find a dead-end job in my hometown in the East Midlands, to repeat my A-levels, which really, really did not appeal to me at the time. I'd really struggled with my A-levels, found them really difficult. And the third one was to just go to university with the 8 points that I had. And as frightening as that was, that's exactly what I did. I just went with what I had and tried to work out the rest as I went along. Wasn't the best career planning at the time, but it's what I had. So I went to university. I decided to do a sort of generic degree. I didn't know what I'd be doing post I finished my BA. I just thought, right, I know I'm going to be working in a business. Let me do a generic business studies degree, see where that takes me. And as I went through the different modules, I found that I was good with the number stuff. And one of my lecturers said to me, "Hey, now, why don't you do all of the sort of finance accounting modules?" And the reason for that is they will give you accreditations for if and when you want to do a professional accountancy qualification. And in my mind, that felt like a no-brainer. I was doing the course and the module anyway, doing the exam and the coursework. I was getting the accreditation, and I'd have to do less professional exams. Win-win, right? So that's exactly what I did. I did the modules that gave me the most accreditations. I left university and pursued a career as an accountant. And it kind of... It was a difficult journey because I wrote to so many accountancy practices, and I guess we were kind of coming out of a recession at the time, so the roles weren't readily available anyway. So I managed to land on my feet. I started off doing payroll at first, and then I was in a FTSE 100 company, and that just opened up a door. This is a construction organisation, but it allowed me to do my accountancy qualification and qualify as an accountant with this organisation. That took about 3-4 years to go through that journey. And then when I got married, I decided I was going to move to Yorkshire. I was going to follow my husband up to Yorkshire. I felt like I had nothing to lose at that point in time. And I got my first real role in the financial service organisation. And I was really fortunate in this organisation because it was a small, what I'd say a building society type of bank where I got to do everything. I got to do financial reporting, I got to do treasury reporting, which I'd never done before, I'd never learned about, trading instruments, derivatives, bonds, all those sorts of things that you kind of go, oh, what are these things? How do they work? And it was great because it was such a small organization. I could just walk up to somebody's desk and ask them a question and learn how to do something, which served me well up until the sort of credit crisis in 2007, 2008, where the bank was nationalized, and I really had to think about, what do I want? I was in my late 20s. Career opportunities in the north were limited, and that's where me and my husband made the decision to move to London. And I continued to work for a bank. I joined Barclays at the time, so it was my first real, I'd say, big corporate organisation in financial services. Managed to do a number of different projects. But when I left to have my first career break for my first child, or my daughter, I was determined to come back and do something different. I was fed up of just doing the normal grind, right? I had something more in me. And I think part of that was I'd come from a small bank where I was writing reports to the executive committee, where I'd landed myself in this massive organisation. And I was a small fish in a big pond. And I didn't have the same exposure that I had previously, but I knew that some of the things that we did as an organisation weren't very efficient. So after my first child, was my first real role on a project. And from that point onwards, there's just been various different doors that have opened, from being a business analyst to being a test manager, and that test manager role was on a program, so it was really, really challenging. Project manager roles have come up, and then program management. So during that sort of, I'd say, 10-year journey, I went from being an accountant into doing multiple projects, which really tests the sort of my boundaries of knowledge, into technology where I am today.
What a journey. And I think there's so much there that you can pick, from the early days, from your family members supporting you on kind of those decision choices, which is hard when you're heading off to uni. You have no idea. Well, I knew I didn't, of what I wanted to be. And, at the time you might think, am I making the right choice? And if you look at where you are today, it's great to see the journey that you've been on. And I think, there's so many women that I've spoken to over doing the podcast series, and so many of them have said, kind of like, say yes and figure it out, take the opportunity. And from what I can hear from what you've just shared is you've had many different opportunities, and at the time it might have been scary and a bit like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing here? But it's really worked out well. And, having that kind of transition from finance and accounting into tech, many people think that's just not possible. So from your perspective, what was it that prompted you to do? It's kind of like a career change, but you're still doing accounting and finance work in the roles that you're working on. So yeah, what prompted you to go from pure finance and accounting to take that opportunity to jump into tech? And what skills do you think that you had that really helped you transfer that over into the tech work and the projects that you're working on today?
Sure. I guess this was a transition that took place over many years, and it wasn't just going from a pure day-to-day accounting role to all of a sudden into, a test manager role, because it's kind of like polar extremes. So I guess the key thing for me was to, having that my first child was a point in my career that made me think, hang on, I want something different. I don't want to have this time, I guess it was time pressure really, because accountants' roles can be time pressured at certain times of the month and over certain periods. I didn't want to have that. I wanted my cake. I wanted to eat it. I wanted to be a mum and have a job, right? So that first project, I remember being asked to be a business analyst and a finance business analyst. So I was looking at requirements from a finance perspective, which, these were processes that I was familiar with. So I could provide what the requirements were. And the good thing about that very first project was actually it wasn't a technology project. It was a org restructure. So it was looking at the operating model and really thinking about processes. And I think one of the things that many organizations do is they fall into the trap of, we've got this new technology, let's implement it, as opposed to going, right, this is our end-to-end process, or this is our organization, this is what we want to be able to do, and this is the technology, software, or tool that we're going to use to be the enabler. So that very first project was probably the one that opened my eyes to, oh my God, I've got to write business requirements. What on earth are those? What's the Moscow rating? It was a real eye-opener, but I learned on the job, right? I just asked questions and didn't think that, I don't know, tell me. I'm happy to learn, but I didn't know at the time. And then I took opportunities like we had a 18-week training course internally. It was about an hour each week, and you'd go and learn BA skills, things like data modeling, how to write SQL, how would you do test scripts, how do you get, and I guess at the time it was very much a waterfall project methodology. So you're looking at traceability right the way from writing your requirements and having your test scripts. Could you trace everything through? It was very, very long-winded but organized in a structured way. And then as time went on, I then picked up other methodologies. I learned how to use Lean Six Sigma for process re-engineering. I learned how to do Agile, how to write user stories, how to use Kanban boards. So I just developed different methodologies you could as a BA, which in turn led to other roles. So as I progressed from being quite junior as an AVP in my career to a VP, I moved on to doing things like test manager role. Now, the test manager role was a complete stretch because I didn't actually apply for that particular role initially. I applied for a project manager role. However, there were too many project managers, so my line manager at the time said, I know you've come to do this, but I reckon you can do the other. And I looked at him like, test manager. Yes, test manager. Not just for one application, but this was for all of the applications in group finance. And I just looked at him like, oh my God, what have I let myself in for? And he just said to me, look, it's okay, I'm here, right? We're going to do this together. We've got a big program for structural reform, which is something a lot of the banks went through in the UK. And that basically meant that you were splitting out the investment arm of the organisation versus the retail customers in the UK. And what we had to do is all the things that were happening upstream was what were the implications on financial reporting. So we had the consolidation tool that needed to be replumbed. We had external vendor tools going out to regulators that needed to be reconfigured. And there was the amount of testing that was needed was not possible as well. So it was coming up with a strategy to kind of go, right, we've got this huge landscape in group finance. We're doing this massive change. However, the challenges are we haven't got enough resources, we haven't got enough environments, data storage, and to replicate the sort of tests that we want to do. We're just not going to be able to do it. It's just not going to be possible. So what are the points of failure? What are the critical points of failure we need to safeguard against? And we wrote a strategy around that and executed it. Thank God it all went through, right? But it was, it was the challenge. It was a really big challenge, which made me grow, right? It made me really uncomfortable, but really made me grow. And then I just moved on to other programs, from things to do with general ledger, things to do with capital. And I guess COVID was a big mix as well, because it meant that I was running programs in a fashion that I've never done before, right? I was doing calls with stakeholders I'd never met, so there was no prior relationship where although I'd done some really big things, I'd been with stakeholders and colleagues that I'd always known. And through COVID, I was doing treasury related programs where I'd never met anyone in the working groups or in the steering committees. I was presenting to senior stakeholders, which I'd never met, which was quite strange. Although I'd been in the organisation for a number of years, I'd never had to liaise with them previously. So you're building relationships in a way that was alien to everyone at the time, right? Continued throughout my career is just one door closes and another one opens, really.
Yeah, I love that. One door closes, another one opens. I think, always being learning and always being open to learning, I think, has shown how it can really take you to places where you never expect to be ended up. And, one of the things that I was hearing from you kind of talking about that part of your journey is that it sounds like you've had some really fantastic mentors around you, sponsors as well, that have believed in you. And maybe where you didn't believe in yourself, like becoming the test manager of a huge project and thinking, oh my God, like, how, why me? Like, this is not comfortable. This isn't something I think I can do. The fact that you had that sponsor that really believed in you, they advocated for you and then mentored you through that particular project is just amazing and really great to hear, especially in such a large organisation that you was working in as well. I think not all women, and I'm sure you've had some challenges yourself as well along the way. We all have great points in our careers, but there's also, as a woman in tech, we know that it's a male dominated industry. The numbers speak for themselves. It's like 27% of women are within tech, and the rest is dominated obviously by males. So as a woman in tech, what have been some of your challenges? Obviously, you've talked about some really positive things there, but what challenges have you faced? And what advice would you share with others that are potentially listening today who are going through those same challenges right now, or lessons that you've learned along the way that could maybe help someone listening in?
Yeah. So there are various challenges that women face, and I guess we've got to start with being outnumbered first, right? I think that's, although it's uncomfortable, I think that's a positive step, right? Often we'll find ourselves on projects where we're completely outnumbered. But in my opinion, that is a step in the right direction. And I guess for the organisations that I've worked for, we've started off locally, we've expanded globally, and that's brought about different challenges for me personally, because the organisation's footprint sort of moved from the UK into India. So I'm of Asian origin, and those challenges were different because, and I'm talking just over 10 years ago. So those preconceptions and those behaviours have changed and are changing. But 10 years ago, I'm a British woman, a British Asian woman, talking to colleagues in India, male colleagues in India, and they're not used to that, right? It's a different setup. It's a different experience for both of us, right? It's not just one way, but it's culturally different as well, right? Some of the expectations that are there in India, although I'm aware of them, they're different for me. Those barriers are different. The way we were treated, the way how the hierarchy works. I mean, India's very hierarchical, and that brought about different challenges for me personally, even with colleagues that originally I just go, no, I'm sorry, I can't accept that, or I know you're probably used to that, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Which probably was me being a bit bold and brave, but sometimes it has to be done, right? You have to say
100%.
no sometimes, and it's and with a rationale and explanation, and I think that's acceptable. We should have healthy debate. But my advice to anybody in that situation is, I guess, if we're starting or wanting to get equality, we've got to start getting comfortable with being outnumbered in the first instance. And it's only over time this will change. We're seeing that change, right? And there are other tools available to us to gain support. So things through the internet, through social media, although we may be the individual in that particular setup, there are instances of this happening in multiple places, and collectively we can support each other.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think the collective, kind of the whole community of women in tech is such a supportive community. Having been involved with it now, really for about the last kind of 8 months or so, I've really seen a community that has each other's backs. And I think, you know, what you said there, being comfortable, being outnumbered, yes, it needs to change, but it's not going to change overnight. And I think the more we can feel comfortable going in that room, being the only woman on the project, and then, you know, getting comfortable with having your voice, saying no, or, you know, challenging things that you don't think are right, having that voice and speaking up, the more that change can happen. And I think that change then can really start to happen on a much kind of quicker basis, because then you get your allies on board and everything kind of starts to all come together in a positive way to see that positive change. One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about today was really around the mentor and sponsor piece. And I know it's something that you and I have spoken about before, and it's something that I know you've had some great experiences, and you've shared some of that already kind of in our conversations today. But I'd love for you to expand more on what you feel that the role of a mentor and a sponsor is, and how that's kind of played out in your career journey so far. But I think it would be really great for us to kind of start with what your definition of a mentor and a sponsor is, because I think sometimes it can be a bit confused. You know, they pretty much they coexist together. And for me, in my kind of career journey, I've had these opportunities where they have just kind of created and kind of just come about together, and they've enabled me to move forward. So yeah, let's talk about mentors and sponsors, and let's get started at the beginning of what do you define a mentor and a sponsor to be, and what's the kind of unique benefits of both of them?
Of course. So, as you say, Kelly, these are my definitions, definitely not from the dictionary, but this is what I would define a mentor and sponsor to be. So a mentor is someone you can seek advice from, not necessarily just limited to your organization, but often they are, because that's where your initial network starts off, right? They can help you manage difficult situations, difficult stakeholders, provide guidance on career moves, and that could be even support promotions from experience. Now, a sponsor, on the other hand, again, in my experience, tends to be somebody more senior, somebody of influence, and who can advocate for you. Often they're the ones that will put you forward for opportunities that you're not aware of, especially in rooms that you're not, or discussions that you're not party to as well. These are very common in corporate organizations, sponsors, but often we don't seek them out. We don't realize they are our sponsors sometimes as well. So I've been using mentors, I'd say, for the past 7-8 years now. They've helped me to navigate large corporate organizations. They've helped me to gain a better understanding of possible new roles that I want to apply for, projects that I may want to work on in the future, and just really help me with difficult stakeholders. When you're on a project, I don't think that I've experienced any project where there isn't at least one difficult stakeholder, but sometimes there are different circumstances, and you may not have that experience yourself, but a mentor can help you with that, or give you a different perspective based on their experience. Now, sponsors, on the other hand, I've had a few of these in my career. First one is my line manager. He's my current line manager, actually. He's absolutely brilliant. He sponsored my promotion from AVP to VP about 6-7 years ago. And then he's sponsored my recent promotion, and I say recent, within the last 12 months, from VP to director. I mean, he's been there to kind of go, you've got this, you do this. But in the same respect, I've had open dialogues with him across those years, and it's not something, I think sponsorship is something that can be created overnight. You need time to build that relationship, and it's two ways, right? Often, can't rush it. Other sponsors that I've had in my career, as you say, you know, when I did that test manager role, if it wasn't for the belief of my line manager at the time, I would have never done it. I would have never have, you know, I guess to some extent it was difficult for me to say, no, I'm not doing it. But in the same respect, it was, you know, it was him kind of going, you've got this, I'm here, I'll help you through it. Other sponsorship event support that I've had through my career has been through the Women in Tech Network. You know, I've had some fantastic sponsorship there and some great opportunities over the past 18 months, 2 years, to the point that I've been recently appointed as Chief of Staff for EMEA. So I think if you can find out who your sponsors are, and I guess if this becomes more important the more senior you become as well in your career, and who's in positions of influence, and I actually think you need to go beyond just your immediate influence yourself. You need to be thinking a bit more strategically and kind of go, okay, that's my line manager, that's my line manager's line manager. Who else is more senior to that? But if I'm at a particular site or a particular part of the organisation that I want to have more influence in, for example, Women in Tech, find those individuals that have that influence, or find those individuals who are active in your site for D&I or whatever that thing is that drives you, right? It could be data, it could be anything, it could be AI, anything that you think is relevant to you and your growth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you there. And I think, you know, for women listening in to this today, or men, it could be anybody, to be honest with you. Sometimes when I speak to people, they want to find a mentor. Sometimes they don't really understand why they want a mentor. And I think it's really important that before you even go seeking a mentor, you really understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, or what's your challenge at that particular time. But if you're someone sitting in listening to this podcast today, and it's like, I really need a mentor, I need someone who can help me navigate X, whatever that may be. But you're sitting there, maybe you're a woman in tech and you're one of only a few, or the only woman, or there's no mentor program that's in your organisation today, and it's just like, I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get this mentor that's going to be able to help me. What advice would you give to women who are potentially seeking out a mentor or a sponsor to help them advance their careers, and the steps that they might want to think about taking to be able to navigate finding someone that can help?
Okay, so I guess first thing to think about when you're seeking a mentor is, what do you want out of the relationship? Okay, a mentorship relationship isn't a monthly catch up over coffee. Well, it is, but it's not the only thing, right? It's got to have purpose. It's got to have value, both to the mentee and mentor, right? If both parties aren't getting anything out of it, it's not going to be successful. So be clear on the intention of needing a mentor, what you want. Up until 18 months ago, I pretty much would find and seek a mentor internally. And I guess for somebody who wants internal mobility, that works well, right? An internal mentor in an organization will also always have the organization's sort of best interests at heart as well. Now, what I've actually found is an external mentor can stretch you a little bit more and kind of grow you that bit more with a different perspective, because they're not tied to an organization. You don't have that same level of loyalty, I guess, when you seek an external mentor. And I guess there are a couple of ways you can do this. There are a number of different programs now available to people. Use LinkedIn to find individuals that you think may be suitable mentors. I guess one of the things, a piece of advice that was given to me was, drop somebody a note, a direct message on LinkedIn. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're not going to respond or say no. But, 9 times out of 10, most people do say yes, all right. But you've got to have that intention. You've got to say why. And if that individual then feels they can help you, they will. I mean, there's not very, or they may go, look, I'm really, really busy right now. Could you, wait till the new year or a more convenient time? So I think we are fortunate that we have more tools and things that allow us access to mentors now. And I guess for me, when I sought my external mentor, I was thinking about my career. I felt as though I was at a crossroad and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just didn't think I could go any further where I was. And, I was surprised that I actually could. So I think you really, really need to know what do you want from your mentor. Can you find somebody yourself, internally, externally? If you're struggling internally, have a word with your line manager. Their network's usually bigger, and they may be able to pair you up with somebody. If you're feeling that you need to go externally or you're out of employment and you're looking for a mentor, then use a program that's available. And there are different programs available out there.
Yeah, some brilliant advice there. And I think your point around LinkedIn is such a fantastic tool, and people are open to helping. You just need to get past that voice in your head, that imposter syndrome, chip on the shoulder saying you can't do this, don't do it, they don't want to help you, all that crazy things that go, I've been there and done this myself. And then when you just send the message out and then someone comes back to you who you really wanted to help you with something or mentor you, and you're like, oh wow, they want to help me. And and I couldn't agree with you more. The amount of advice I say to people, do you know what, reach out to 5 people, just do it. And if you don't hear anything, you've not lost anything. If you do, then do you know what, fantastic, and you've got a great opportunity ahead of you. So yeah, big advocate for people just doing the spontaneous reach out and seeing where it goes. You're passionate in the women in tech community space, and you're a huge advocate. Like you said, you've just become chief of staff for women in tech community, and obviously doing some fantastic work with them and other organizations that you're involved with and kind of focused on. With the groups that are out there, we know that it's so important, especially within the tech space, for the retention of women in tech. It's an industry where the numbers are pretty shocking, that 50% of women before the age of 35 are leaving the tech industry for a whole host of different reasons. A big one of them is not feeling like they're part of the community. They're not part of their organisation. They're struggling to feel that sense of belonging. What advice would you give to any women who are not involved in potentially a community like the Women in Tech community that you're part of, or Elevate Women in Tech, or any of the other kind of community groups that are out there, as to how being part of a community can really give them that kind of that ability to feel that they belong within the tech industry, and hopefully help to reduce that number of fantastic women that we're just seeing exit the industry and join other industries, and tech is just losing these fantastic women. So what advice would you give to getting involved in communities?
Of course. I guess the thing to remember is a lot of us are in the same boat, right? We may not publicly talk about it or discuss it. We all have self-doubt. We all have that imposter syndrome, or that voice at the back of our mind going, hey, you can't do that. And you've got to go down and go, yes, I can. It's that, that angel and devil sat there going, you like the cartoon strips that you have in your childhood.
100%.
But it's just a case of, we're all doing it, right? We've got life struggles. It's not easy. We've got kids. We're balancing, right? Particularly as women, we're constantly juggling. and it's hard to make time for ourselves as well. And because being a part of a community means we have to make time for ourselves and kind of admit some of these challenges that we have. So don't be afraid to do that. And you know, some of these groups could be within your organization, so you could kind of squeeze them into your day job if you can, you know, if you're fortunate. If they're not, I'm sure there are other women in, you know, as I say, in the same boat as you within your organization. Create those groups, create those communities, create those connections. The best way you can, the easiest way you can, whether that's through your organization, through LinkedIn, through what other tools, apps, whatever's available to you and works for you, right? It's your community. You need to feel a part of it. And, you know, once you're part of it, it's really empowering. Can build confidence, can just lift you on those days when you're not feeling 100% or you're not feeling it, or you know something horrible's happened, and you just need somebody to go, okay, right, breathe through it, like you would through childbirth, breathe through it, but something better will come along, right? We can all do it. We're strong enough to do it. It's just that we doubt ourselves. And you know, we all have deadlines, we all have pressures in our lives, and we've just got to try and find the balance that works for us. So there isn't one, you know, one shape fits all. Only you're the judge of that, but you've got to make whatever it is, whatever your passion is, whatever your drivers are, make it work for you.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And from a DEI perspective, not so much for women, but for organisations. Obviously, you've been part of some quite large corporate organisations yourself. But if you're a company listening into this and you're thinking, we want to do more, we want to do more to inspire and cultivate this inclusive culture for our women, but for all of our staff as well. Have you found any initiatives that have been, or activities that have been more effective for those companies that are really trying to make a difference with DEI, you know, specifically focused on, if we looked at that women in tech space, where things have really worked well for them? And what are the most effective initiatives that you've seen work in various workplaces, or through the work that you do with the women in tech community, that you've heard about other organisations being able to implement and make impact?
Yeah, so I guess it's really important that there's a lot each of us doesn't know, right? And sometimes we have fear of what we don't know as well. I've been really, really fortunate. I've worked for an organisation that has employee resource groups that cover multiple sort of aspects, from race, gender identity, right? And I guess we all have our different, yourself first of all, and then understanding others around you. And you know, the stats suggest and say it, right, that the more diverse we are as an organisation, as a team, the more successful we are. So it feels like it's a no-brainer. And for those of you that aren't part of organisations that have employee resource groups, think about the things that matter to you, right? Whether that's a working mums group, right? It doesn't necessarily just have to be technology or orientated, but you may find you have similar challenges, right? From childcare, nurseries, schools, primary schools to high schools, teenage, the list goes on, right? And you don't have to limit it. That then becomes your first intersection, and then you start thinking about other ways that grows. Then it's, you know, race then comes into it, whether it's and faith, and it's really interesting how you start with something, but it can build into so many different segments. But it's really looking at the things that work for you, I think, are important. Driving that community that works for you. And you shouldn't be, you know, there shouldn't be that there's an answer for everything. Some of this is discovery. Some of this is, you know, our own individual personalities, what we're comfortable with, and where we're vulnerable, right? Let's not forget, we are all vulnerable in different ways, shapes and forms, some more than others at different times in our lives. And we're thankful for the things that we're blessed with, right? It's just a case of, I think it's really what's inside you as a person and you're really passionate about stuff. For me, it's, like I say, it's women, it's technology, but it's also, I want to be a role model for my children. And I think that's quite important, because I don't feel like I had those positive, strong role models in front of me. They had different challenges to me,
Yeah.
but I want my children to see that. That's kind of where some of my drivers are, to be fair.
And I think that's such a key point. It's that, what's your personal purpose? What gets you out of bed? What really drives you? And it's hard sometimes. I know it took me a really long time to fully understand what that was, what I thought my purpose was, which I suppose when I was a bit younger, before I had kids, it was different, and then it's changed and it evolves, and now I couldn't be clearer on my purpose and what drives me. And very similar, being role models to my children, letting them understand that they might hit some challenges along the way, they might face some biases, but anything's possible as long as we can talk about it, we can work through it, and things. The world is changing, so it should make it an easier place for them to be able to navigate and work through. So yeah, I think that finding your purpose and kind of iterating it and really kind of digging deep definitely is something that's helped me over the years. In terms for any men listening in, or any women of privilege, because a big thing that I always like to talk to people about, and I think something that we just should all have more of an awareness on, is really that understanding of our privileges, and how, when you are in a position of privilege, and sometimes you don't recognize that you've got this privilege, but when you are in that position of privilege as a man or a woman, supporting women in tech or any marginalized group, how do you think that people could be better allies? What advice would you give to those individuals that can have that voice for those that unfortunately might not have the opportunity or be in that room to really make that change? So yeah, what advice would you give to those people?
First thing I'd really like them to consider is, what can you do? Somebody in a position of privilege can actually be quite impactful from just doing really simple actions or steps to create space. And that might just be allowing a co-worker to share an idea, recognizing and sort of saying, so and so's done this, isn't this great? It's just being that support for that individual. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It's just being cognizant of what's going on around you, right? To create that space and that sort of recognition for the individual. For anybody that's in leadership, I would say you should be a mentor. If you're not a mentor, why not? You as a mentor, you learn so much as well. I think all leaders can contribute at least an hour once a month. It's not a huge amount of time, but the impact of that is quite rewarding, actually. When it works and it makes a difference, and it does make a difference to the individuals that have reached out to you and asked you to support them. And then I guess the third thing that I'd say to anybody in a position of privilege is, how do you support and sponsor talent in your organization? Because you should be doing that. And again, if you're not, why not? It's something that's really, really easy for you to do, and it can make such a difference.
That's some really great bits of advice there. And like you said, they're really simple things that people can do and change literally today. You can go out, if you're listening to this podcast, and you can sit there at the end of it and think, why am I not a mentor? Who is it in my team, in the environment that I work in, that I can sponsor and put forward or advocate for in those meetings where they just don't have? And I think sometimes people don't do things because they think it's such a big asked that they need to do, or start this big program of work, or but it's not. It's those little intentional changes that people can do that then brings that snowball effect, that then creates change, and then you can really see an impact and see that difference and start to lift people up. And I love that. There's such practical, simple tips that you gave there. We're coming to the end now, Hena. So it's been great speaking to you. I've really enjoyed today. But to finish up, I've got one last question for you. So what would your top 3 tips for women in tech today who are looking to advance their careers into more senior or leadership positions in tech be?
Okay, so my first piece of advice would be to make a list of your skills. Okay, what are you good at, and those that you want to develop. And the reason I think this is really important is it's a useful bit of information to use when you're benchmarking for a new role or looking at a job spec and going, I can't do this. I'm not sure I can do that. Where when you've got the skills in front of you, you can kind of go, actually, I can do this, I can do that, and I want to develop this. This feels like a good role for me. And I think that it's a great way of assessing a future role. Alongside this, and it's part of the same tip, is don't look at the job title. Often put off by the title itself. So look at the actual, what are the skills that we're looking for? A mentor, right? It's really important to have a mentor and identify your sponsors, those people who are going to influence your career progression and can actually make an impact or have an impact on that trajectory. So they're the individuals you need to identify. And my final piece of advice is find your tribe, the women and male allies that support you, encourage you, that pick you up when you need it, as you will do, and you do the same for them. That piece of encouragement from a friend or a text message sometimes that comes in when you don't think you can do it has such a phenomenal impact on you.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got like-minded individuals that you've connected with, that you're on the same wavelength. It's I can't put it into words what that means, right? And the impact it has. But you'll know when you feel it, right? You'll know when you found that tribe as well.
100%. And 3 great tips, but that last one about finding your tribe, and LinkedIn is a great place to find your tribe if you want people external from your network or from your kind of work environment. And you're right, those little moments that people can do can really elevate and just bring you up when things are really, really tough. And it's just those little moments that really count. So yeah, for anyone who's out there today who is looking to kind of advance themselves on, or they're just struggling in general, I love the other 2 tips, but the last one, finding your tribe, is a big advocate, and I really, really do couldn't agree more with you on that one. That's it. Like, we are at the end now. We've asked all the questions that I would like to ask. I will be sharing Hena's details in the podcast information. So if anyone wants to reach out to Hena, I'm sure she'd be more than welcoming to bring people on board. But from me and from the Elevate audience, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful learning from your experience over your past 20 years in the industry, and how you support and work with women in tech, and also your kind of perspectives and your experience of mentorship, community and sponsorship. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly, and to everyone listening. And if anyone does want to reach out, do drop me a line. Maybe
a mentor opportunity in the making to be, who knows. To all of our listeners, thank you very much for tuning in for another episode of Elevate Women in Tech. We hope that you've really enjoyed today. And like we said, if you are looking for those tribes, those communities, then consider getting yourself involved with groups like Elevate Women in Tech or the Women in Tech community, which I'll share details also within the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe for more conversations with trailblazers in the tech industry. Thank you very much.